And I have no problem with politics. I don't
have a problem with Raila Odinga now.
I don't have a problem with Raila Odinga. He's my opponent. There is no problem. We are competitors. I have no problem with him. I have no problem with Raila Odinga organizing protests. There are protests in this city of Paris every day. It doesn't, I mean, it's part of democracy. It's part of expression. All I have told our friends Raila Odinga and company is let us not engage in destruction of property. Let us not engage in violence. Protests is perfect.
We all know that those white journalists from those Western media companies, they don't respect African leaders. They'll ask any sort of questions that they will not ask their own presidents. So in one particular interview that was done by France 24, here is what President Ruto of Kenya answered these journalists. I'm telling you, the answer will make you shocked.
Sudan. The situation is getting worse. The US-Saudi ceasefire is breaking down. Violence resumed in Khartoum, in Darfur, in South Kordofan. Thousands have been killed. Millions of civilians are on the run. The UN Secretary General, I'm quoting him, warns that the scale and the speed of Sudan's descent into death and destruction is unprecedented, and it could radiate insecurity across the region. Are you as worried as Antonio Guterres?
I am as concerned as Antonio Guterres. In fact, there are already signs and vestiges of genocide.
Genocide.
I mean, there is, what is going on in Sudan is unacceptable because military power is being used by both parties to destroy the country and to kill civilians. It is completely unacceptable. And the war is senseless. The war is not legitimate in any way because where Sudan is before it was disrupted by this war, the people of Sudan themselves have decided to take charge of their own country. They were on the path towards a democratic process that would install, for the first time in a long time, a civilian administration. But it was disrupted by this war. So what is going on in Sudan is unacceptable. And that is why, as the leadership of the region, IGAD, we had a meeting 2 weeks ago. We agreed on a mechanism of how to deal with Sudan because, first and foremost, it is our responsibility as regional leaders, as countries that border Sudan, and as countries where Sudan is a member of the IGAD. We have also agreed on both how to engage the military and how to develop a process that brings on board civilians and the trajectory of the people of Sudan making a decision about their own country. Yes, today I had a meeting with President Abiy, the chair of AU, to agree on the next steps. I subsequently had a meeting with President El-Sisi, who is a leader in our region and brings a lot of value into the equation because they share a big border with Sudan. There are 5 million Sudanese in Egypt. So he becomes a very critical player in settling Sudan because our interest is to stop the war, stabilize Sudan, and make sure that we deal with the humanitarian crisis that currently is ongoing.
But all the mediation efforts have stalled. You yourself, you were appointed at the helm of this mediation, but the head of the Sudanese army, General al-Burhan, says, no, we don't want William Ruto because we believe he's backing the paramilitary RSF. So basically, you were told, don't mess with Sudan. What's your reaction?
Well, everybody has their own opinion.
Well, he has a strong opinion about you.
But I don't think there is any license whatsoever for anybody, any leader, to engage in the destruction of their country and to pander to, we do not want interference.
Is he the main culprit?
It is what he is saying about IGAD. It is what he is saying about the UN. It is what he is saying about the talks that were there in Jeddah. That is unacceptable. But that is his opinion.
Is he the main culprit of what's going on, Mr. President?
The main accusation against Kenya is that we have Hemeti in one of our hospitals in Nairobi, which is not true. It's a whole false narrative. But that aside, we are much more concerned about the millions of people in Sudan who today are dead, or the children and women who have no access to food. In fact, people are dying, children are dying because they have no food. And that is why the Secretary General called for a pledging session on Monday, and Kenya is among the countries that pledged and is giving money for humanitarian support for the people of Sudan because we believe in a solution.
Can you answer my question? Is General al-Burhan the male culprit in your eyes of the genocide you're describing?
It is not for me to apportion blame at the moment. We want to resolve the issue. And that issue will not be resolved until we get General al-Burhan, General Hemeti, and the political leaders, the civil society, women groups, youth groups, onto the table so that we can sort out this problem. You still hope it's feasible? It is feasible.
DRC, quickly, obviously in the east of the DRC, the East African community sent a military force several months ago. However, President Tshisekedi of the DRC has been critical of the force, saying, you know, they're not really going after the armed groups, especially the M23 group, and the Kenyan general who was leading the force resigned, and we don't really understand what's it. And by the way, we don't really want this force anymore. We'd rather have a force from SADC. So this means this military venture is a failure, and you're going to pull your troops out, if I follow the logic.
We will not walk away from the people of DRC. The problem in DRC is our problem. The people of DRC deserve better than they have. They deserve a much more peaceful environment. They've been at it for 20, 30 years. We cannot continue to turn a blind eye to what's going on in DRC. And that is why the region made a decision, and we are spending our own resources.
But you're not welcome anymore, Mr. President. The President said we don't want...
Welcome or no welcome, it is our region. And for your information, when we were the first, Kenya was the first in the theater in November last year.
I remember that.
When we went to DRC in November last year, the M23 was 7 kilometers to Goma. I can tell you today, there has been cessation of hostilities the last 3 months. The M23 are nowhere near Goma anymore. In fact, the M23 have been pushed, and they have actually acceded to the program that was set up. The last 2 days, in fact, the last 2 days, there was a mission by all the countries, Kenya, Uganda, DRC, Rwanda, Burundi, on a mission to go and identify the cantonment area for M23. We have made huge progress in stabilizing Eastern DRC. There are sporadic cases in many areas because this is not a problem of a year. This is a problem of 30 years. I mean,
so you don't accept the criticism from the President?
The last 6 months, we have managed to do what was not done in 30 years. We have stabilized the place. There is a real chance today that the M23 will be cantoned. In fact, the last summit we had in Burundi, DRC government itself said, yes, where we had identified as the cantonment area for M23 is not livable because there is no water, there is no road, there is nothing, it's a bush. So we said, okay, let's agree on a different place. And that is the place that the mission was being sent to look at 2 days ago. So there is general acceptance that a lot of progress has been made. It could have been faster, maybe, but I don't think it could have been faster than what it is.
So you're staying the course?
We are staying the course, and DRC is on board. Aside from all the discussions in the media, DRC are on course because they can see this is the only realistic chance for us to sort out the challenges of DRC.
Last issue, Somalia. On May 15th, it was announced that you would reopen the border after more than a decade being closed. There is an all-out crackdown against al-Shabaab by the new Somalian president, but some are saying as a result, we're seeing al-Shabaab go towards Kenya and strike Kenya. According to the latest count, at least 22 security officers were killed in the Lamu and Garissa counties just in the last 2 weeks. Was it the right decision to reopen the border at the time when al-Shabaab seems to be back on Kenyan soil?
It was, it still is the right decision, because the challenge of al-Shabaab, we have to confront it. And we intend and we have every chance to defeat al-Shabaab. What al-Shabaab is trying to do is, because there is the drawdown of troops that's supposed to happen from this month of July, they're trying to reposition themselves to create the impression that they will take over the region. We will not allow them. We are very clear. We are working with President Hassan in Mogadishu. We have decided as the frontline states, Uganda, Kenya, Sudan, that we are going to stay this course. And if necessary, and we think it is necessary, we are going to stay beyond the drawdown timetable so that we don't lose what we have achieved merely because we have walked away from a situation and allowed al-Shabaab back into the equation or into the theater. We are very clear, and we are going to send a very powerful message to al-Shabaab that they are not going to reverse the gains that we have made in the last couple of years.